In this tutorial, I'm going to talk about the arpeggiator. Arpeggiators are kind of interesting things. They were on synthesizers back in the late 70s and 80s, and then they kind of disappeared for a while. But now manufacturers are putting them on synthesizers again, and they're really kind of a fun little thing to play around with, and they can be quite musically useful as well. First, let's discuss some terms. What is an arpeggio? An arpeggio, comes from an Italian word for harp, and basically what it means is to play the notes of a chord. That's a C major chord I played, C, E, G, and another C on top. To play the notes of the chord, instead of playing them together, if I wanted to play an arpeggio, I play them one at a time, one after the other. So here it is together, one after the other. That's an arpeggio. Now arpeggios can go up for 1 or 2 octaves, or 3 octaves, or whatever. Arpeggios can also be played up, or down, or up and down. And again, as I said, you can play up or down more than 1 octave if you like. That's an arpeggio. Now, an arpeggiator on a synthesizer will do that for you. You play the notes of a chord, and then you can adjust the pattern. You can get the arpeggiator to play those notes up, like this, or down, or up and down. But with an arpeggiator, it happens automatically. To turn the arpeggiator on in the XP30, we're going to orient ourselves to the display like we always do. We'll move our eyes to the left. There are the 6 mode buttons. Further to the left, we see the 6 key effect buttons. And right in the middle of that group is a key called arpeggio. I'm going to press it and light it up. And now I'll play that block chord again, and just watch my fingers, and you'll hear that the synthesizer is playing the arpeggio for me. And you can tell, I think, if you listen carefully, that it's playing that arpeggio up and down. Typically, older arpeggiators on early synthesizers, you had a choice of up or down, or up and down, or random. Contemporary arpeggiators are a lot more flexible and do a lot more interesting stuff. I'm going to show you a couple of the basics here, and then we'll zoom in on the screen and I'll show you how to change some of the settings. A fun thing to do, and a musically useful thing in certain situations to do with an arpeggiator, is to lock it, which means I play the chord, and then I get the arpeggiator to continue playing even after I let go. That's not happening right now. It stops as soon as I let go. On this XP30, the way to lock the arpeggiator is to hold the notes down with arpeggio lit up, and then while I'm holding it, I'll press arpeggio again and the button just next to it which says transpose. Press them both, and now do you notice the arpeggio button is blinking? So I can let go and the arpeggio continues to play, which is kind of fun. A neat little bonus to that is if I play a new chord, the arpeggio shifts or transposes to the new chord that I played. Pretty cool, right? And then to stop it, just press arpeggio so it goes away. Okay, so arpeggio, you play a chord. If you don't read music, and you don't know any music theory, you don't know the piano, a fun little experiment is just try playing white keys only. And don't play white keys that are right next to one another. Always skip a key. And that basically will give you some experience with some chords that will sound pretty decent. All right, so I'm going to pause here for just a second, and then I'm going to zoom in the camera, and I'll show you some more advanced functions with this arpeggiator. So excuse the messy camera work here. Okay, I hope you can see the display well enough there now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to lock that arpeggio again so that I can show you some of the functions. And oops, I didn't do it right. Remember to lock the arpeggio. We hold arpeggio and press the transpose button so that arpeggio blinks. And now my hands are free to mess around with other functions. Okay. This display is going to show us the settings for the arpeggiator. The easiest way to see them is to hold the arpeggio button down, which I'm going to do with my left hand here. I think my left hand is out of the camera frame right now, but you'll see when I press down arpeggio as it plays, you'll see that this display will change. It currently says patch play. When I press, now it says arp select, arpeggio select. And there are 4 different fields that I can adjust. The first one is style. It says 16th. I'm going to change that by spinning the value wheel. So it's playing, this is 8th note triplets, this is 8th notes, quarter triplets, and quarter notes. There are lots and lots of different styles here. Here's an interesting one, portamento. You hear some of the notes sliding? Glissando, and etc. There are lots and lots of interesting ones. Some of them even sound like instruments. For instance, some bass patches. Bass arpeggios. That might sound better if I played some. Okay, and let's keep going. Let's look at some of the others. There's one that I like. There are these guitar things. You remember in a previous lesson I was talking about how it's hard to strum a synthesizer keyboard? Some of these guitar arpeggios will simulate that effect of strumming. And there's even one for finger picking, if you want to do your best Bob Dylan imitation. So style lets you choose many different styles. We don't have to worry about just up, down, or up and down anymore. Accent will accent specific notes. I'm going to skip that for right now. I'm going to go back to the 16th note up and down arpeggio. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to instead change the octave. Let's listen to it first. And then when I change the octave, listen to the effect of the arpeggio. So it's doing that same arpeggio now up 2 octaves and 3 and 4. Okay, so that's what the octave will do. You can shift it down as well. Okay, and then finally the last field is tempo. That's how you control the speed of the arpeggio. I cranked the tempo way up to 172, really fast. The default I think was 120. If that's too fast for the music I'm writing or working on, I can slow it down. Okay, so again, to review, arpeggio is playing the notes of a chord one at a time, and you can use the arpeggiator, which is to the left of the display in the key effects group. Press it to light it up and play a chord, and it will arpeggiate. To lock the arpeggiator, you hold arpeggio button and press transpose at the same time, and then let go, and the arpeggio button will blink. And that's how you lock the arpeggiator, like I'm doing now. Okay, you can lock and transpose the arpeggio. To adjust it, we hold the arpeggio button down and we can control any of these 4 settings. Arpeggios are a lot of fun. Take some time and experiment with the Arpeggiator on the XP30.